I watched Boxing Gossip's preview slash prediction video on this George Groves versus Jamie Cox fight last night. And I also watched several other YouTubers' videos on the fight. And they all clearly know a lot more about Jamie Cox than I do. That has to be said. And they're all pretty much in agreement that George Groves is not only going to win this fight, but he's likely going to stop Jamie Cox and do so without too much trouble. Several of them drew comparisons between this Groves-Cox fight and Eubank Yildirim. The main comparison being the fact that Yildirim was assumed to have a certain degree of talent based upon what he'd done in sparring, not based upon anything we've seen in a professional ring. And the same goes with Cox. Based upon sparring rumors, people believe he's going to be a threat in a professional boxing ring. That is understood. However, I personally believe that's where the comparisons end. Because with Eubank and Yildirim, for one, Eubank is a peaking fighter. He's a guy who, if he's not at his peak now, he's coming towards his peak. He's a guy who is looking more and more impressive every time I watch him, and less vulnerable every time I watch him. George Groves, on the other hand, is not that guy. George Groves is looking more vulnerable every time I watch him. I think George Groves is on the slide. I'm not saying he's a shot fighter at all, but I'm saying he's on the decline. His best days are behind him. So that right there is one area where I don't see any comparison. Because one guy is looking better and better and the other guy's deteriorating. Secondly, stylistically, Avni Yildirim, we all said this before the fight. I said it, you said it, we all said this. The Avni Yildirim stylistically was tailor-made for Chris Eubank Jr. Now, some people like myself felt like Yildirim, again, assuming that he would be strong enough, I thought that he'd at least give Eubank Jr. a good fight. And I picked Eubank Jr. to win, but I thought with Yildirim's strength that I assumed he had, with his toughness that I assumed he had, he'd be able to give Eubank Jr. a decent fight. And I assumed it because Eubank Jr. hadn't blown away people like Spike O'Sullivan and Nick Blackwell at middleweight. He hadn't blown away Renaud Quinlan. So I thought, okay, Yildirim, big, strong super middleweight, he'll at least be able to take Eubank Jr.'s punches for a few rounds. Evidently he couldn't, but that's what my assumption was based on. But stylistically, I said many times, and all of us were saying, he's tailor-made for Eubank style-wise. But with Jamie Cox and George Groves, do you think that Jamie Cox, a short, aggressive, fast-punching southpaw brawler, is that a style that is tailor-made for George Groves? I would personally say no. I think Groves prefers fighters who give him a bit more time and space, rather than fighters who rush him. I know he fought Chudinov. Chudinov came at him. Chudinov is not as frenetic as Jamie Cox, from what I've seen of Cox. And I've been and looked at some of Cox's fights, the fights that Boxing Gossip talked about, actually, since watching his video. I had a look at some of those fights. I didn't watch them all the way through, but I just scanned through and got a general feel of what Cox is about. And, you know, one of the things that Boxing Gossip said about Cox is that his defense is terrible. I have to agree with that. From the footage I've seen, his defense looks absolutely appalling. Will his defense be that bad against George Groves? Or will he be a bit more circumspect, given the fact that he's moving up several levels from what he's used to fighting? I guess we'll find out. Also, Jamie Cox tends to rush his work. He tends to fly in at 100 miles an hour and actually smother his own work a lot of the time, because he's too anxious at getting a brawl going that he doesn't give himself time and space enough to work effectively. So that's another weakness that I've noticed. But again, generally his style, I would say that's not a tailor-made style for George Groves. If I was managing George Groves and I wanted him to look good, I wanted a showcase fight for him, I wouldn't pick, just forget about Jamie Cox's size for a second. Let's just look at his style. I personally wouldn't pick that style for George Groves to make him look at his best. Chudinov came forward. Chudinov is a clean fighter. You know, he's not a brawler. He's clean. He has that Eastern European, you know, jab, stand up straight, etc. Jamie Cox is much more rough and ready than a Chudinov. He comes in lower. He's a southpaw. The punches are coming from different angles. Defensively, he's probably worse than Chudinov, to be fair. But stylistically, he's different. You know, stylistically, I think he's going to be more erratic than Chudinov. I think he's going to be a bit more unpredictable than Chudinov. That's my personal view. So, yeah, stylistically, I don't think this guy's tailor-made for Groves. The only thing is the size. That's the big crux of the whole argument. Jamie Cox might have a style that can give Groves problems, but is he big enough to be able to implement that style, to make that style effective? Is he big enough? Does he have the size? Can he take Groves' power? This is the question, and that's the legitimate question right there as far as I'm concerned. But in terms of the other comparisons, as I say, Groves is not a peaking fighter like Eubank is. Jamie Cox's style is not tailor-made for Groves the way that Yildirim's was made for Eubank. You know? So that's what's going through my head after watching, you know, several videos, including Boxing Gossip's video. An excellent video, by the way, Boxing Gossip. Definitely got me thinking and made me go have to do my research because, like I say, I've been quite ignorant when it comes to Jamie Cox. I really don't know much about him. So, yeah, interesting. But at the same time, it raised more questions in my head. You know, and for me, when I've said that, I wouldn't be shocked if, and I'm not making a prediction for this fight, right? Because I think Jamie Cox is too much of an unknown quantity for me to put myself out and make a prediction. But when I said that I wouldn't be shocked if Jamie Cox pulled off the upset, why do I say that? Because I think Jamie Cox is so good? Because I'm believing sparring rumors? No, that's not why I said that. I said it because I believe George Groves is a fighter on the slide. And all the years I've watched boxing, fighters on the slide can end up losing to people that a few years ago they would have wiped the floor with. That's what can happen with a fighter is on the slide. And that's why I say I wouldn't be shocked if Jamie Cox won. Not because I believe Jamie Cox is that great, because I really don't know nothing about him. It's because of the fact that I think Groves is a deteriorating fighter. That's why. And when you've got a hungry guy like Cox going in there against a deteriorating fighter, a vulnerable fighter, strange things can happen. So that's my perspective on it. Anyway, just to give you a quick update on where I'm at, how I'm thinking with regards to this fight. All right? Drop your comments in the comment section below. Let me know how you feel. It's Satman, I'm out.